evening, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are listening. I believe that you're a member of 3D or a volunteer who just indicated interest to work with us. I am Obong Joe, the Human Resource Director, and I'll be taking you through a topic called effective communication. And in the next 20 to 30 minutes, we're going to be having a fun time. And you're going to be learning how to make your communication effective, right? 4 years ago, I was invited to a seminar, and it took me 10 to 12 hours to get to the venue. And we had to spend 2 days in that venue listening to 6 speakers each day, right? 6 speakers each day. And it was one of the most miserable weekends of my entire life, because I had to sit in a certain position. I had to sit at a certain place listening to a boring presentation. The first speaker spoke for 1 hour, and it was as if I would go into the ground. A lot of people were sleeping, just like you can see from the image here. A lot of people were disoriented. A lot of people were not interested in what the speaker was saying. The second speaker came in like manner, spoke the same way the first speaker spoke, and it was a disheartening presentation. I couldn't go out. I couldn't leave the venue. I didn't have anywhere to go. And we were asked to submit our form before entering the hall. So you could imagine how boring and how frustrating that weekend was for me. And so this this weekend created a loop in my life. But as God may have it, a particular speaker came up. That was the last speaker on the first day, the last speaker of the first day, that is the 6th speaker. And in 30 minutes, everywhere was vibrating. Everyone was carried along. It was as if we had come to a point where the presentation or the seminar began to make sense. And to our amusement, in less than 30 minutes, he was done. And that 30 minutes seemed like a minute or two for a lot of us. And everybody was clamoring for him to continue because of how proficient he was in releasing the information that he came with. Because of the uproar and the standing ovation that we gave to the last speaker, the organizer sought it right to ask him to speak the next day. He was only going to speak on the first day, but because of how well he presented and how the audience loved his presentation, he was asked to speak the next day. And this was the reason, after the seminar, the 2 days seminar, I went about thinking, why should everyone, or why did everyone had a certain attitude towards towards different speakers, and a similar attitude towards one speaker? And this brings me to why we have to understudy effective communication. A lot of people think that writing or speaking, or because they have spoken something, or because they have said something, that means they are communicating, is a misconception. All right. So I'm going to be addressing 3 major misconceptions that we experience and a lot of people have as regards communication. Number 1 is the aspect of sender. When a sender believes that because he has said something, he believes in his mind, or she believes in her mind that what he or she has said has been sent out, okay? Because the person writes a book or because a person acts a movie, the person or everybody believes that what they have done at that moment is communication. Okay, so it's a normal misconception to believe that whenever a person speak or whenever a person writes or whenever a person acts, that person has sent an information. The second thing that we need to look at is the mode of communication, the modes of communication. All right, some people believe that if a message or a communication is boring, that regardless of the mode that they have communicated. All right. Some people believe that if communication is interesting, that means they have communicated. But is that true in the sense of what communication is? Is it based on the mood of the audience, or is it based on the mood of how it was communicated? Boring? Was it a boring communication? Was it a boring presentation? Was it an interesting presentation? Was it a fun presentation? Does this mode actually signifies that the communication has been received properly? The last one we look at is the receiver. As long as there are people there to listen to you, that means you have communicated. So a lot of people have several misconceptions about communication, and this is the reason why lots of people speak, a lot of people write, a lot of people do certain things, but at the end of the day, they do not reach their audience or they do not communicate. So, what is communication? How then do we know that someone has communicated? All right. So, from this diagram, you could see that a sender sends, you see, the sender sends a message which is encoded. All right, it passes through any channel, maybe media, social media, like what we are using, the Zoom, all right, or whatever avenue it uses. And it could be interesting, could be boring, could be fun, could be exciting. Now, it is decoded by the receiver. But then, until there is a feedback, it is not a complete communication, right? So regardless whether you write, whether you speak, whether you act, or whatever form of or method you're using to communicate, or the mode you're using to communicate, whether it is boring, whether it is interesting, whether it's fun, as long as the receiver do not give a feedback or do not work according to your desire, that communication is not effective or not complete. You could be passing noise to the receiver, and the receiver do not understand what you are saying. You could be sending something, you could be interesting, everybody is excited, but the people do not get what you're saying. They're just happy, they're just excited that you've said something, they like what you said, but at the end of the day, they can't remember one thing that you have said. All right, so we need to understand what is effectiveness, what makes communication effective. All right, we're going to be looking at three things that makes communication effective. Number one, or okay, it's called 3Ds. All right, it's called 3Ds. Number one is called desire. If you have your pen, you can write it down so that um, you follow me gradually. Number one is called decided. All right, decided. Why should you be decided, or why should you have a decided mindset before you begin to speak? A lot of people do not have their aim and objective written down before they begin to present what they have in their mind or begin to write down what they have in their mind. It's just like I'm coming to this Zoom class unprepared, coming to this Zoom class without a target. There's a reason why I am here teaching you and speaking about effective communication. There's a reason why this topic was being chosen. There's a reason why I've decided to speak on effective communication and train you on it. So everyone should have an aim and objective. In education where I work, there is something we call behavioral objective. And as a teacher or as an educator, if you do not have a lesson plan, if you do not prepare your lesson plan, or you do not have a behavioral objective, you are not fit to go into the class to speak, because before you go to the class, you must know what you want your learners to know. You must know what you want your learners to understand. You must know what you want your learner to do. Okay, so you must have it in the back of your mind that this is the thing you want to achieve in the class. These are the things you want your learners to do or to know or to understand and to effect. So you have to be prepared. Aside just having aim and objective, you have to have a prepared methodology. You have to know what system and what strategy you're going to use to achieve that goal. All right. So, as a speaker or as a communicator, you must first be decided. You must have your aims, your objective, your goals before you begin to write or speak. Then, secondly, you must be thoroughly prepared for what you have to say. Now, the second thing, the second D that we must pay attention to is what we call decisive. You have to be decisive. And when someone say you are decisive, that means you are prompt. You know what to do in a situation. Assuming there's an emergency, whenever you went or wherever you went to, you know how to act, how to change, how to adapt. And this calls for flexibility, right? A person who is decisive knows what to do. He's not confused, regardless of what situation arises or regardless as a result of the presentation, you know what to do as a speaker. All right, you know what to do as a speaker when you are confronted with a situation. Now, one of the attributes of someone who is decisive is that the person is flexible. You see, from this picture, this lady is doing an exercise. You should be flexible as a speaker or as a communicator. A communicator that is rigid, that has the only thing in his mind, all right, we know you are prepared. We know you have a plan to go, all right? But then in a situation where you go to an audience and the people are moody or the people are excited, but what you want to present does not need them to be in an excited mood, because they will forget or lose the essence of what you have to do. So what do? You have to be flexible. Assuming you had presented you have arranged your presentation on what you had to say in a mood that is straight to the point, direct, and the people are excited. How do you move the audience from the stage where they are to the stage where you want them to be, or the mood where you want them to be, and still be presenting without losing touch? So it takes someone who is decisive, someone who is highly prepared, someone who knows his norms, who has plan A, plan B, plan C, in spite of what may come up, has everything in stock for every kind of situation that comes up. So he knows what to do, or she knows what to do. The second thing is that you must know the right words to use. You must have the right words when you are communicating. It is not just okay, or um, it's not just right for you to go to a presentation or have what you want to say without deciding the words to use based on the audience. Assuming you are in a place where you have religious fanatics, the certain words you do not use, because if you use those words, you will lose touch with the audience. The certain audiences that you seek the goals and objective that you have in mind, you cannot use those words because the audience do not understand, or their understanding do not come to that level, right? So you have to know your audience, and in knowing your audience, you have to choose the words you use. So you could go to an audience, or you could go to a presentation, or you could have something in your mind. The mood will change the words you use. All right. Um, we can continue. I'm sorry, I had a call that came in. Now, the third D is desired. Desired, clearly stated here on your screen, is desired. Now, in spite of the fact that you have decided what you want to do and you are decisive, the next thing you have to look at is what is the desired end product? What is the desired end result? For every time you speak or write or communicate, what is the desired end result? You can dictate that from your aim and objective, from your decided, all right? The first D. Now, if your communication does not affect the mindset, if your communication does not affect the mindset of your hearer, spurring them to action or changing their mindset or influencing their mindset, that means your communication was not complete, right? To the end of every communication is that the mindset of the hearer or the receiver is influenced. Now, as soon as the mindset is influenced, it creates a change in attitude. It creates a change in behavior. It results to a change in action and leads to success. That is the feedback, right? Now you're having a feedback because you were expecting a certain result, and that result is being gotten as a result of their mindset changed by the words you use or the method of communication you applied. So action must be taken. Action must be taken if your communication is effective. So we're going to run down the line and look at the three things, the three Ds that makes up or that influences your communication to be effective. Like I said the first time, the number one D that we must look at is that your communication is decided. You must be well planned, well thought, well prepared. The second thing that makes your communication to be effective is decisive. Your communication must be decisive. You must know what you want, okay? You must be specific, you must be articulate, and you also must know how to adapt to situations, assuming they arises in the course of communication. And the third D that you must also put in mind when you are preparing your slides, when you are preparing what you have in mind, is that you must have a desired end product. Your communication should be persuasive. I need to say this. Your communication must be persuasive. A lot of people have issues. A lot of people have what is distracting them. A lot of people have problems. And for you to come up with an idea and say, okay, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, you must be persuasive enough. In the world that we live today, no one is able to achieve anything worthwhile if he or she does not learn the act of persuasion, right? You must learn the act of persuasion. And so, how is this important? As chapter directors or as a volunteer in 3D, you would be given some roles and some jobs to do. And the method at which you can communicate your ideas, your thoughts, your strategies, and the plans for achieving whatever duty you've been given as a director or as a volunteer to another is through communication, through the medias or mediums of communication, right? And if your communication is not effective, you have complaints such as this: people aren't responding, people are not doing what you've asked them to do. You'll be frustrated because, as volunteers, I need to say this, as volunteers, a lot of people do not understand what it means to be a volunteer. They understand what it means to do a job and being get paid or paid for doing something. But if you have to do a job without being paid, it takes an extra effort. It takes communication skills to be able to influence and persuade people to do things, even though that thing is beneficial to them. So, as a director that you're going to be, or that you are, or a volunteer, or a position, I know you probably may have a position in 3D, or maybe you're just someone who is listening to this and want to improve on yourself. You have to learn communication to the core. This is the reason I had to train myself. For the past 5 years, I've read hundreds of books on communication. I've attended programs, I've gotten certifications on communications, and it prompted me to write a book. This book illustrates how to use story to arrest attention and influence a change. Right? You see that influencing a change has to do with first capturing the minds of the people. And by capturing the mind of the people, you must know the method of how to catch the mind and how to capture the mind of the people, influence them, and instigate that they do it without you pushing them, by using the right words. All right. So for every communication to be complete, there must be a feedback. All right. So I believe that you have learned something worthwhile today. And I I hope that we're going to be meeting more often. I am Obongchu. And for those of you who may want to know me properly, this is my picture. As when you come to the organization, you probably will see me do some live videos. I want you to be prepared for what is about to come. 3D is an organization that you're going to be like, it's going to improve you, it's going to make you become better. And if you're interested in getting my books, I have some books. I've written books on the mind, and you're interested in getting the book on public speaking, you can type on this link, seller.co/m/Obongju. Let me give you some time to write it. Seller.co/m/Obongju. I have a free material there that you can download and you can use for your consumption. I hope you have benefited and you've learned something from today's presentation. Remember always, for your communication to be effective, it must contain the 3 Ds: decided, decisive, and desired. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Thank you.